The alarm screamed through the research station like a wounded animal. Red lights flashed on every wall. Dropped her coffee cup and ran toward the command center, her boots hitting the metal floor hard with each step. She found Commander standing before the main screen, her face pale and tight. Other crew members gathered around, all staring at the same image. A ship was falling from the sky. It burned bright orange as it cut through the clouds, leaving a trail of black smoke behind it. "Diplomatic vessel," said without turning around. "They sent a distress signal 30 seconds ago, then nothing." Felt her stomach drop. She had studied them for years but never met one in person. They were the most feared species in the known galaxy, 7 feet tall, covered in dark scales, claws that could cut through metal like paper, teeth designed for tearing flesh. Every planet knew stories about warriors. They conquered worlds. They showed no mercy. They were the reason most species built bigger weapons. The ship hit the ground 3 kilometers from the station. The impact shook the floor beneath their feet. Through the window, saw a ball of fire rise above the distant trees. "We need a rescue team," said. He was the cultural liaison officer, a calm man who always spoke softly, but even his voice shook now. "There could be survivors." Shook her head slowly. "Protocol says we wait, are dangerous even when they are friendly, injured." She did not finish the sentence. Everyone understood. Stepped forward. "I volunteer." Every head in the room turned toward her, looked at her like she had lost her mind. "You are a," said, "not a soldier." "Exactly," replied. "If there are survivors, they will need medical help, and they will need someone who understands their biology." She paused. "I have studied my whole career. This is why I am here." Stared at her for a long moment. Then she nodded once, sharp and quick. "Fine, take a team, but at the first sign of danger you come back. Understood?" "Understood." She gathered 4 others, including a medic named. They loaded into a transport vehicle and drove toward the smoke. The forest around them was thick and green. 4 was a young planet full of life. Birds flew away from the noise of their vehicle. Small animals ran through the undergrowth. It was a peaceful world. That peace felt wrong now, with fire glowing ahead. They found the crash site after 10 minutes. The ship had torn a long wound through the forest, cutting down trees and burning everything in its path. The vessel itself was broken into 3 pieces. Flames still licked at the wreckage. The smell of burning metal filled the air. "Over there," pointed. A figure lay near the largest piece of the ship. It was massive, even lying down. Recognized the shape immediately. Adult, male based on the size. His scales were dark green, almost black. One of his arms bent at a wrong angle. Blood, darker than human blood, pooled beneath him. They approached carefully. The eyes opened when they got close. Yellow eyes with black slits for pupils. Eyes that had seen death many times and did not fear it. "Human," the growled. His voice was deep and rough like stones grinding together. "I am Ambassador, my ship. Attacked pirates." "We are here to help," said. She kept her voice calm and steady. "We have medical supplies." Tried to laugh but only coughed. More blood came from his mouth. "Help, yes, but not for me." His massive clawed hand grabbed his arm with surprising gentleness. "The cubs, find the cubs, please." Cubs felt her heart freeze. "Children here." "Where?" she asked. Pointed toward the burning wreckage with a shaking finger. "Inside, still inside, their caretaker. She did not survive, they are alone, scared." His yellow eyes met brown ones. "They are my sister's children, please." Did not hesitate. She ran toward the flames. "Wait," shouted behind her, but she did not wait. She could not wait. The heat hit her like a wall. She pulled her jacket over her mouth and nose, trying to breathe. The inside of the ship was chaos. Broken metal everywhere, sparks falling from destroyed wires. Bodies of adults lay still and silent. The caretaker guessed. Pirates had done this. Pirates had killed them all. Then she heard it, a small sound, a hiss, a growl coming from the back of the ship. She pushed through the wreckage until she found them. 3 small figures huddled in a corner pressed against the hull. Cubs, cubs. They were the size of large dogs covered in scales that were lighter than adult scales, almost silver. Their eyes were wide with fear. Their small mouths were open, showing rows of tiny but sharp teeth. They saw and screamed. It was a high sound full of terror. They pressed harder against the wall, trying to get away from her. One of them swiped at the air with small claws, warning her, telling her to stay back. Stopped moving. She lowered herself slowly, making her body smaller. The cubs watched her with wild eyes. Behind her appeared in the doorway. "We need to go. The ship could explode any moment." "I know," she said quietly, "but they will not come with us. They are too scared." Looked at the cubs. He had read the same reports had. Frightened young were dangerous. Their instincts told them to fight anything that came close. Many researchers had been hurt trying to approach scared cubs. Some had died. "We cannot leave them," said. "We cannot force them either," replied. "They will attack." The cubs continued to hiss and snap their teeth. Their small bodies shook with fear. They had just lost everything. Their caretaker, their safety. Their whole world had crashed and burned around them, and now strange creatures were coming toward them. Creatures that smelled wrong, looked wrong, moved wrong. Looked at them and saw something that others might miss. She did not see monsters. She did not see future warriors. She saw children. Lost, scared, desperate children who needed help. She reached slowly into her pack, tensed beside her, ready to pull her back if needed, but was not reaching for a weapon or a tool. She pulled out a small package, emergency rations. Inside was a simple thing, a butter biscuit, dry and plain and meant only to keep a person alive in bad situations. The cubs bared their tiny teeth harder, broke the biscuit into 3 pieces, and she held one out toward them. The fire crackled around them. Metal groaned as the ship slowly collapsed. Smoke filled the air, making it hard to see, hard to breathe, but did not move. She stayed low to the ground, her arms stretched out, a small piece of biscuit resting on her open palm. The 3 cubs stared at her. Their silver scales reflected the orange light of the flames. Their tiny teeth remained bared, sharp and white. Their eyes never left her face. They were waiting for her to attack. That was what they expected. That was what they had been taught. When something bigger comes toward you, it wants to hurt you. Fight or run. Those were the only choices. But did neither. She just waited. Stood behind her, tense and ready. "We have maybe 2 minutes before this whole section goes up." "Then be quiet and let me work," she said softly. The smallest cub was pressed furthest into the corner. It was shaking harder than the others. Its hisses had become whimpers. Could see that it was exhausted. Fear takes energy. Terror takes even more. This little one had nothing left. Placed the biscuit piece on the floor in front of her. Then she moved backward. 1 step, 2 steps. She made herself as small as possible, sitting down with her legs crossed, her hands open and visible on her knees. The cubs watched every movement. For a long moment, nothing happened. The fire grew louder. The smoke grew thicker, shifted his weight from foot to foot. Then the smallest cub moved. It crept forward on all 4 legs, belly close to the ground. Its siblings hissed at it, warning it, telling it to stay back. But hunger and exhaustion were stronger than fear. The cub reached the biscuit piece. It sniffed once, twice. Then it grabbed the food and shoved it into its mouth. The cub chewed. Its eyes went wide. It had never tasted anything like this before. Ate meat, always meat, raw and bloody. This was different. This was sweet and soft and strange. The cub swallowed, and then it looked at, not with fear this time, with something else, curiosity. Slowly placed another piece on the floor. The second cub came forward, then the third. Within a minute, all 3 were eating from her hand. Their tiny teeth brushed against her palm but did not bite. Their rough tongues licked crumbs from her fingers. "By all the stars," breathed behind her. "How did you know that would work?" smiled softly. I did not know, I just hoped. She stood up slowly. The cubs looked up at her, uncertain. She took a step toward the exit. Then she looked back at them and clicked her tongue softly, a sound her grandmother used to make when calling the family dog. The cubs followed. They walked out of the burning ship together. In front, 3 cubs padding along behind her like ducklings following their mother, and the others stood outside, mouths hanging open. Nobody spoke. Nobody could find words. The ship exploded behind them. The force knocked to her knees. The cubs screamed and ran toward her, pressing their small bodies against her legs. She wrapped her arms around them, shielding them from the heat and the debris. When the fire settled, she looked down at the 3 small creatures clinging to her. They were still shaking, but they were not running. They were not attacking. They were holding on to her like she was the only safe thing in the universe. They returned to the station. Ambassador had been brought to the medical center, worked quickly to save his life. The injuries were bad but were strong. He would survive. The cubs refused to leave side. When the medical team tried to take them for examination, they hissed and snapped. When security officers approached, they growled and showed their teeth. But when spoke to them softly and led them into the examination room, they followed without complaint. Commander watched everything from the observation window. Her face showed no emotion, but her eyes were full of questions. "What did you do to them?" she asked when came out of the room. "I fed them," said simply. Nobody just feeds cubs. Their training starts from birth. They are taught to accept food only from dominant figures. You would have to fight them, prove you are stronger than them. That is their way. Shrugged, maybe their way is not the only way. Did not look convinced. This could cause problems. The high command will hear about this. They might see it as an insult. You treated their young like pets. I treated them like children, corrected, because that is what they are. The commander had no answer for that. She walked away, shaking her head. That night sat in her quarters, finally alone, finally able to rest, or so she thought. A sound came from outside her door, a scratching sound, then a small whine. She opened the door. 3 pairs of yellow eyes looked up at her from the hallway. The cubs had escaped the medical center. They had searched the station until they found her room. Now they sat outside her door, waiting. "Sighed, you cannot sleep here." The cubs did not understand her words, but they understood her tone. The smallest one whined again and pressed its head against her leg. She let them in. They curled up on the floor beside her bed, piled on top of each other like a nest of puppies. Within minutes, they were asleep. Small snores and growls came from the pile. One of them twitched in its sleep, chasing something in its dreams. Watched them for a long time. These were the most dangerous species in the galaxy, killers, conquerors, monsters that made grown soldiers run in fear. But right now, they were just tired children who had lost everything and found one person who made them feel safe. The next morning, Ambassador demanded to see her. Walked into the medical center with the 3 cubs following close behind. Lay on a bed designed for his massive body. His wounds were bandaged, his broken arm held in a metal frame, but his yellow eyes were sharp and clear. Then he looked at the cubs. They were sitting calmly beside her, not hissing, not growling, not afraid. One of them was chewing on a piece of biscuit she had given it earlier. How asked. His voice was a deep rumble full of confusion. "How did you do this?" "I do not understand the question," said. "You did not fight them. You did not dominate them. You did not prove your strength." His clawed hand gestured at the peaceful cubs. "Yet they follow you. They obey you. They trust you." Thought about her answer carefully. "Where I come from, we do not earn trust through fear. We earn it through kindness." Stared at her for a long time. Then he said something that shocked everyone in the room. "Teach me." The days passed slowly on the research station. Ambassador healed faster than anyone expected. Were built to survive. Their bodies could recover from injuries that would kill most other species. Within a week, he was walking again. Within 2 weeks, he was strong enough to train. But he did not train. Instead, he spent his time watching. She went about her normal work. She studied plant samples from the forest. She wrote reports. She attended meetings. And everywhere she went, 3 small cubs followed behind her. They had stopped hissing at other humans. They had stopped growling at strangers. They walked calmly through the hallways of the station, their silver scales catching the light, their yellow eyes curious and alert. The station crew did not know what to make of it. Some were afraid. These were, after all, even small ones could be dangerous. Others were amazed. They had never seen predator cubs behave this way. A few brave souls tried to approach the cubs with food, the way had. The cubs accepted the treats politely but always returned to side. Watched all of this with growing confusion. One morning he asked to speak with Alone. They met in the station garden, a small room filled with plants from Earth. The smell of soil and green things filled the air. Sunlight came through the glass ceiling. The cubs played in the corner, chasing each other around a small tree. "I have been a warrior for 40 years, said. He sat on a bench that creaked under his weight. "I have fought in 12 wars. I have conquered 3 planets. I have trained hundreds of young to fight and kill." Sat across from him, listening. "In all that time," he continued, "I have never seen cubs behave like this." He pointed at the 3 young ones. They had stopped playing and were now rolling in a patch of sunlight, their bellies exposed, their eyes half closed with pleasure. They are relaxed. They are happy. They are not afraid. "Is that strange?" asked. "It is impossible," leaned forward. "Cubs are always afraid. Fear is our first teacher. From the moment we are born, we learn that the universe is dangerous. Our parents teach us this. Our trainers teach us this. We learn to be afraid, and then we learn to turn that fear into strength." "That sounds exhausting," said quietly. Blinked. No one had ever said such a thing to him before. "It is our way. It has always been our way. Fear makes us strong." "Does it?" watched the cubs. They had found a rubber ball that one of the human children had left behind. They were batting it back and forth, making small happy sounds. "Or does it just make you tired?" The ambassador did not answer. He could not. Later that day, brought to the station's common room. Human crew members sat at tables, eating lunch, talking, laughing. Some played games in the corner. Others read books or watched videos. The atmosphere was light and easy. Stood in the doorway, unsure how to act. On a ship, meals were silent. Warriors ate quickly and alone. Showing enjoyment was considered weak. Laughing was almost unheard of. "Come," said, "sit with us." She led him to a table where and were eating. They looked nervous when the massive sat down, but they did not run. They smiled politely and continued their conversation. "We were talking about our families back home," explained. "I have 2 daughters. They are 6 and 8. I miss them very much." Tilted his head. "You speak of your offspring openly." "Of course, why would I not? Among my people, speaking of personal feelings is not done. It shows vulnerability." Shrugged. "Missing my children does not make me weak. It makes me human." The cubs wandered into the common room. They sniffed at various tables, accepting small bits of food from crew members who offered them. One of the cubs found a human child sitting alone, a young boy named whose parents worked in the engineering section. The cub approached carefully, then sat down next to him. Looked at the cub looked at. Then the boy reached out and scratched the cub behind its ear ridge. The cub made a sound no one had heard before, a deep, rumbling purr. It leaned into the boy's hand, eyes closing with pleasure. Across the room, watched with wide eyes. That is. A child petting another child, finished for him. Nothing more. But it was more. Knew it was more. He was watching something that should not exist. And a human together, peaceful, happy. No fear between them, no violence. just two young creatures enjoying each other's company. That night, a new message arrived at the station. Commander called an emergency meeting. "The High Command has learned about the Cubs," she announced. Her voice was tight with worry. "High Commander is coming personally to retrieve them. His warship will arrive in 3 days." The room went silent. Everyone knew that name was the most feared warrior in the military. He had destroyed entire fleets. He had never lost a battle. He was called the Blood Star, the Crusher, the End of Worlds. And he was coming here. "There is more," continued. "He has received reports about how the Cubs have been handled. He is not pleased." Stepped forward. "What does that mean?" "It means he might cease actions as an insult to honor. He might see it as corruption of their young, looked at with tired eyes. He might demand punishment." "What kind of punishment?" asked. The commander did not answer. She did not need to. Everyone understood. Punishment usually involved blood. Stood in the corner, his massive form still and silent. His yellow eyes moved from two. He had healed enough to fight. He could defend her if it came to that, but was stronger, was the strongest. No one defeated the Blood Star. Looked at the Cubs. They had followed her into the meeting room and were now sleeping at her feet, completely unaware that danger was coming. They trusted her to keep them safe. They believed she would protect them. She had 3 days to figure out how. Outside the station window, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere out there, a warship was coming, and on that warship, a warrior was preparing to judge her. Reached down and placed her hand on the head of the smallest cub. It stirred in its sleep and pressed closer to her leg. She would not let anyone hurt them, no matter what happened, no matter who came. She would find a way. The warship appeared on the 3rd day exactly when promised. It was massive, dark, covered in weapons. It blocked out the sun as it descended toward the planet. The research station shook as it landed. Dust and debris flew in all directions. Trees bent from the force of the engines. Commander ordered everyone to the main hangar. They stood in lines, trying to look calm, trying to look professional. But fear hung in the air like smoke. Everyone could feel it. The warship's doors opened. Steam poured out. Then the warriors came. 50 soldiers marched out in perfect formation. They were huge, armored, carrying weapons that glowed with deadly energy. Their scales were dark red and black, colors earned through battle. Their eyes swept over the humans with cold interest. To them, these soft creatures were barely worth noticing. And then appeared. He was larger than any had ever seen. 8 feet tall, muscles like twisted metal. Scars covered his face and arms, each one a story of violence. His eyes were not yellow like most. They were orange, burning like twin suns. He moved with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. The High Commander stopped in the center of the hangar. His gaze moved across the assembled humans until it found Ambassador, standing with a cane to support his still healing leg. "Ambassador's voice boomed like thunder. "You live." Bowed his head respectfully. "Thanks to the humans, Commander, they saved me from the wreck." "Yes, the humans." His burning eyes turned to scan the crowd. "I have heard interesting stories about these humans, stories about how they handled our young, our future warriors." His voice dropped lower, more dangerous. "Where is the one responsible?" Stepped forward, but before she could speak, moved past her. "I am here," said. Every eye turned to her. She was so small compared to so fragile, so soft. Yet she stood straight, her shoulders back, her gaze steady. She did not look away from the High Commander. Approached her slowly. Each step made the floor vibrate. He stopped when he was close enough to reach out and grab her. Up close, he smelled like iron and fire. "You," he said, looking down at her like she was an insect. "You are the one who corrupted our cubs." "I helped them," replied. Her voice did not shake. "They were scared and alone. I gave them food. I gave them safety." "You gave them weakness." Slip curled back, showing massive teeth. You treated them like pets, like prey animals to be fed and pampered. You have damaged their warrior spirits. I treated them like children, because that is what they are. A growl came from deep in his chest. You dare argue with me, little creature. You dare speak back to the Blood Star. I dare speak the truth. For a moment silence filled the hangar. No one moved. No one breathed. The tension was so thick it could be cut with a knife. Then laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. It was the laugh of someone who found amusement in others' foolishness. You have courage, he admitted. Stupid courage, but courage nonetheless. His orange eyes burned brighter. I challenge you, human, combat here, now, for the honor of the cubs you have insulted. A gasp went through the crowd, stepped forward. Commander, please, she is not a soldier. This is not fair. Fair? Did not even look at her. Nothing in the universe is fair. She chose to interfere with matters. Now she faces justice. He returned his gaze to, accept the challenge or admit your cowardice and face execution. Those are your choices. Felt her heart pounding. Her palms were wet with sweat. She knew she could not win a fight against this monster. He could kill her with one blow, but running was not an option, and execution meant she would die anyway. She opened her mouth to accept the challenge. But before any words could come out, a sound stopped everything. A scream, high and fierce, coming from the back of the crowd. The humans parted quickly, and there they were, the three cubs. Someone had tried to keep them locked away, but they had escaped. They had heard the commotion. They had come to find their human. The smallest cub ran directly toward. The other two followed close behind. They pushed past the massive legs of warriors. They ignored the humans who tried to grab them. They had only one goal. They reached and immediately turned around to face. Three small bodies, three pairs of yellow eyes, three mouths full of tiny teeth bared in defiance. They stood between and the High Commander. They were shaking with fear. They were so small compared to him, but they did not run. They planted their feet and growled, warning him to stay back. They were protecting her. Froze, his burning orange eyes went wide. For the first time, confusion replaced confidence on his face. "What is this?" he demanded. Ambassador limped forward, his voice filled with wonder. "They are defending her, Commander. They have chosen to protect the human." "Impossible," shook his head. "Cubs do not defend outsiders. They defend only blood family, only pack. This human is neither." And yet they stand before her, stopped beside, looking down at the cubs with new understanding in his eyes. "Perhaps, Commander, our definitions of pack are too narrow." Stared at the cubs. In all his years of war, he had seen many things. He had seen soldiers die for their generals. He had seen warriors sacrifice themselves for their ships, but he had never seen this. Young ones, barely old enough to hunt, putting themselves in danger for someone not of their blood. It went against everything he knew, everything he believed. "You," he said to, his voice was different now, quieter, uncertain. "What did you do to them?" "I told you," said. She bent down and placed her hands on the cubs' heads, calming them. "I helped them. I fed them. I kept them safe." She looked up at the towering warrior. "I showed them that strength does not have to mean violence, that being powerful does not mean being cruel." "That is not strength," growled, but his voice lacked conviction. "Then explain why they fight for me," stood up straight. "Explain why these children, these warriors in training, have chosen to stand against the most feared commander in your military. They are not running. They are not hiding. They are facing their fear for someone they love." The word hung in the air. Love, it was not a word used often. It was considered soft, weak, useless. But watching these cubs standing their ground, trembling but unmoving, refusing to abandon their human even in the face of certain death, could not deny what he was seeing. This was not weakness. This was something else entirely. Behind him, his warriors shifted uncomfortably. They had come expecting violence. They had come expecting to watch their commander destroy a foolish human. Instead, they were watching something that challenged everything they had been taught. Looked at the cubs for a long moment, then he did something no one expected. He lowered his weapon. "Explain," he said. "Explain how you did this, explain this, other kind of strength." Smiled, it was a small smile, tired but hopeful. "Sit down," she said. "This might take a while." They sat in the station garden, surrounded by green plants and soft light. It was a strange sight. The most feared warrior in the galaxy, sitting on a bench meant for humans, listening to a woman half his size explain things he had never considered before. The cubs played nearby. They chased bugs. They rolled in the grass. They climbed small trees and jumped off branches. They were happy, completely unaware of how close death had come. "Humans are predators too," began. "Many species in the galaxy forget this. They see our soft skin and our small teeth and they think we are prey, but we hunted, we killed. We ate meat and wore the skins of our victims. We were dangerous." Listened without interrupting. His orange eyes followed her words like a hunter tracking prey. "But something different happened with us," continued. "Our children are helpless for years, not weeks or months like most species. Years. A human child cannot survive alone until they are nearly grown. This meant we had to protect our young for a very long time." "That sounds like weakness," said, but his voice was curious, not mocking. "That is what we thought too at first, but it turned out to be our greatest strength." Picked a flower from the garden and turned it in her fingers. "Because our children needed so much care, we developed something other predators did not. We learned to nurture. We learned to teach. We learned to love." The word again, love, shifted on the bench. "We discovered that a pack held together by fear will break apart the moment a stronger predator appears," said. "But a pack held together by loyalty, by trust, by genuine care for each other, that pack will fight to the last member. That pack will never betray itself." She pointed to the cubs. They had found again the human boy. The boy was throwing a ball and the cubs were chasing it, bringing it back, waiting eagerly for him to throw it again. "Those cubs did not stand against you because they were ordered to," said. "No one told them to protect me. They chose to. They looked at the most dangerous creature they had ever seen, and they decided that my life was worth risking theirs." Watched the cubs play. Something shifted behind his eyes, something old and hard beginning to crack. "In the military," he said slowly, "soldiers follow orders because they fear punishment. They fight because they fear death. They obey commanders because they fear what will happen if they do not." He paused. "I have always believed that fear was the only way to control others." "Fear works," admitted, "but it has limits. Soldiers who fight from fear will run when the fear of the enemy becomes greater than the fear of their commander. They will betray you the moment they think they can escape punishment." She stood up and walked to where the cubs were playing. They stopped their game and ran to her, pressing against her legs, looking up at her with trusting eyes. She scratched them behind their ear ridges, and they made that deep purring sound. "But these three would never betray me," she said. "Not because they fear me, because they know I would never betray them. That is what loyalty looks like. That is what trust creates." Was silent for a long time. The garden was quiet except for the sound of small feet running through grass and children laughing. Finally he spoke. "When I was young, I was afraid all the time, afraid of my trainers, afraid of failure, afraid of being seen as weak." His voice was different now, softer, more honest. "I turned that fear into anger. I became strong. I became a conqueror. I became the blood star." He looked down at his massive clawed hands, hands that had taken countless lives. "But I have never known peace," he admitted. "I have never felt safe. Even now, surrounded by my own soldiers, I watch for betrayal. I sleep with one eye open. I trust no one." Sat back down across from him. "That sounds lonely." "It is." The admission seemed to cost him something. I thought that was the price of power. I thought being alone was what strength meant. It does not have to be. Over the next several days, something remarkable happened. Did not leave. His warship remained parked outside the station, but his soldiers were ordered to stand down. Instead of punishing the humans, the High Commander began to observe them. He watched how they worked together, how they helped each other without being ordered, how they shared food and stories and laughter, how they argued sometimes but resolved their conflicts with words instead of violence. He watched the cubs most of all. They were growing, not just bigger but bolder. They explored the station without fear. They played with human children. They learned new games and new sounds. The smallest one had even started trying to speak human words, though its mouth was not quite the right shape. One morning, a fire broke out in the storage section. Alarms screamed. Smoke filled the hallways. The human crew ran to fight the flames and evacuate the area. The oldest cub, the one had named, did not hide or run. Instead, she ran toward the smoke. She found two human children who had been playing in a nearby room, too scared to move. Grabbed one by the shirt and pushed the other with her nose, guiding them through the smoke to safety. She brought them out coughing but alive. Witnessed the whole thing. He watched a cub risk her life for human children, children who were not her blood, children who were not even her species. That night he asked to speak with privately. "I have made a decision," he said. They stood on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. "I will recommend to the High Council that begin a cultural exchange with humans." His eyes widened. "Truly. I do not fully understand what you have shown me," admitted. "This kindness, this nurturing, it goes against everything I was taught." He turned to look at her. "But I cannot deny what I have seen. Those cubs are stronger than any I have trained through fear. They are brave. They are loyal. They would die for their pack without hesitation." He took a deep breath. "If this is what human methods can create, then my people have much to learn." The next morning, the entire station gathered in the hangar. Stood before them, his warriors assembled behind him. But there were no weapons drawn, no threats made. Instead, the High Commander knelt. Not in submission, not in defeat, in respect. "Human," he said formally, "you have shown me a different kind of strength, a strength I did not know existed. On behalf of the Empire, I thank you." Stepped forward. The three cubs walked beside her, their silver scales gleaming in the light. They sat at her feet, calm and proud. "I did not teach them to be strong," she said. "They were always strong. I just taught them that they did not have to be afraid." Nodded slowly. Then he stood and looked at his warriors. "Remember this day," he ordered them. "Remember what you have seen. The galaxy will change because of it." The warship departed that afternoon, but it carried more than soldiers. It carried a message, a story, a new idea that would spread through the Empire like fire through dry grass. In the months that followed, arrived at human stations across the galaxy. Warriors came to learn. Teachers came to understand. Slowly, carefully, the most feared species in known space began to discover what humans had always known: that the greatest power is not the ability to destroy. It is the ability to protect. Back on 4, sat in the station garden. The three cubs had grown larger now, almost too big to fit on her lap. But they tried anyway, piling on top of each other, pressing close to their human. Found her there, recording the scene on his device. "For the historical archives," he explained with a smile. Laughed. "We are not that important." "You changed a galaxy," said, "with a biscuit." She looked down at the cubs. They looked back at her with trusting eyes, eyes that had once been filled with fear, eyes that now held only love. "Not just a biscuit," she said softly. "A choice. Anyone could have made it. But you did." The sun set over the forest of 4. Stars appeared in the sky, distant and bright. Somewhere out there, warriors were learning to be gentle. Predators were learning to nurture. Fear was slowly being replaced by trust. And it all started with one human, 3 scared cubs, and a simple offer of kindness. Ambassador often told the story in the years that followed. He told it to councils and generals and young warriors just beginning their training. He always ended it the same way. The greatest predator, he would say, is not the one who inspires fear. It is the one who inspires loyalty. Remember that. Remember the human who taught us this truth. Remember that strength and kindness are not enemies. They are partners. And across the galaxy, they did remember. They always would.